Our top focus on WION at this hour. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned of a significant response to Europe's militarization as he addresses a foreign policy forum in southern Russia. Now, relationships between Russia and the EU spiraled downwards after Moscow sent troops into Ukraine, leading the bloc to bolster its defenses. Now, Putin has accused Europe of stoking hysteria to excuse rising military spending and said that Russia did not pose a threat. He claimed that Russia was fighting the NATO alliance in Ukraine and mocked US President Donald Trump's comment that Russia was a paper tiger.
We
take it calmly. I don't know in what context it was said and how. Maybe it was said with irony. Maybe he told his interlocutor, "This is a paper tiger." But what can it mean? Go and deal with this paper tiger.
The Russian leader also blamed Kyiv for conducting strikes around the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, warning that Moscow may respond in kind. Europe's largest atomic energy plant, which in a cold shutdown mode lost power over a week ago, the longest outage so far. Now, commenting on the potential supplies of US long-range missiles Tomahawk to Ukraine, Putin warned that this could worsen an already battered relations between Moscow and Washington.
Can Tomahawks harm us? They can. We'll be shooting them down and improving our air defense systems. Will this damage our relations, which are now seeing some light at the end of the tunnel? Of course it will, but how could it be otherwise?
And to discuss more, we're being joined by Mr. Peter Kasnik. He is a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at the American University. Thank you so much, Professor Kasnik, for joining us on the broadcast.
Glad to be with you.
So let me start off by saying that now that Putin has swiped back at Trump, calling Russia a paper tiger, and deflected by suggesting that NATO, in fact, might be one. Now, my question to you is that with President Trump labeling Russia as a paper tiger, do you think it's an accurate assessment of Moscow's current capabilities, or do you think it could be a miscalculation by the West?
I think it's a really stupid thing to say, to call a country with thousands of nuclear weapons a paper tiger. Now, what Trump is trying to say is that the world expected Russia to have an easier time in defeating Ukraine. Yet, despite the fact that Putin says that Russia's army is weak, the Europeans keep saying if Russia succeeds in Ukraine, it's going to gobble up one piece of Europe after another. So we have to spend enormous amounts on our militaries to protect against an expansionist Russia. When the reality of what Trump is saying is that Russia is not going to want to take on NATO. If Russia can't even easily defeat Ukraine, is Putin really crazy enough to go after NATO? Of course not. But the Europeans have been trying to scare their publics into accepting unlimited military spending, which is a waste of resources, money that's needed for housing, for food, for education, for roads. And so we need to get off this warpath everywhere right now, because it's just getting more and more dangerous and more ludicrous what's going on in the world right now. The wars in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, the tension between the US and China over Taiwan and the South China Seas, tension between India and Pakistan. I mean, we have a whole world that's using military means to answer problems that have to be resolved peacefully and diplomatically. So I think what Trump said is stupid, it's provocative, it's dangerous, and it's wrong.
Right, Professor Kasnik, and commenting on the potential supply of US Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, President Putin has warned that this could worsen an already battered relation between Moscow and Washington. Now, I want to understand from you now, Putin has called NATO's warnings hysteria and insists that an attack on a member is impossible to believe. Now, given Russia's track record, is it really that far-fetched to imagine Moscow going on the offensive here?
Yes, I think it's far-fetched. And we saw this repeatedly during the Cold War, turning the adversary into this huge, powerful boogeyman that wants to take over the world. And I was on recently in a debate show with a former Lithuanian prime minister, and she was a defense minister, and she was saying that Putin is as bad as Hitler and Stalin. So of course we can't negotiate. Once you demonize your adversary that way, then diplomacy never becomes an option. But so that's very, very dangerous. Putin is not going to take over more of Europe. He's got his hands full with Ukraine. Putin once said, anybody who doesn't want to recreate the Soviet Union has no heart. Anybody who wants to recreate the Soviet Union has no brain. And so, but the West doesn't see that. So they exaggerate the threat from Russia in order to scare their populations into wasting their resources on their militaries instead of what people really need to have a better life. But there are groups that are going in a different direction. We recently saw the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, meetings at which Modi and Putin were holding hands and talking to Xi Jinping. I'm glad to see the growing rapprochement between India and China, because the global South that they represent the leadership of is the wave of the future. We see this with the BRICS. We see this with the African Union. We see this with nuclear-free zones around the world. We need to go on a peaceful path, figuring out how we develop a global security structure that represents everybody's interest, not what NATO is doing now, not what the United States has been doing for years. We need a different direction.
Now, to paint a more comprehensive picture here, we're also being joined by Dr. Umid Nazmi Hazir. He's a political scientist. Now, Dr. Hazim, I need to understand from you, how do you assess this pushback from Russia's standpoint when now Putin has swiped back at Trump, calling Russia a paper tiger? Now, do you think this is just a way to assert credibility and also maybe test NATO's resolve here?
First of all, I would like to underline that there will be no escalation, especially United States and Russia will not escalate the tension from my view, because they have never involved in direct confrontation or war against each other, because as we witnessed during the Cold War, there was a Cuba crisis. Even during the Cold War, they couldn't fight each other, because it is one of the main policies of United States and Russia. I do believe that they test each other, and especially they are testing each other because they would like to see their potential. And Russia may test NATO, as we witnessed in the drone crisis, because as far as you remember that Russian drones enter Poland and they were shut down by Poland. I think it was a test of Russia. Russia was testing NATO mainly. And on the other hand, Trump also testing Russia. Trump is trying to pressure on Russia by speaking this way. That's why Trump consider, or in other words, Trump said that Russia is a tiger or like a very weak country. And what's more, Trump said that Russian economy is suffering right now because from the war. I think each side, Russia and United States, testing each other, because now Trump changed his policy and pressuring on Russia, because Trump wants to end this war as soon as possible. And by way of this rhetoric, Trump wants Russia will start negotiate. Therefore, both sides, Russia and United States, nowadays especially testing each other, and they will not be involved in a big confrontation, I guess.
Right. Dr. Hazir, but I would like to get your opinion on one more comment here. Putin has said that the supply of US Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, he said that it is going to worsen an already battered equation between Russia and the United States. And Professor Kaznik has already said that it would be rather far-fetched to think that Russia can go on offensive and we should take the warning at face value. But according to you, how should we view this warning? Now, should we see this as Moscow's way of perhaps deterring deeper Western involvement, or do the more logical thing and take Putin's warning at face value, perhaps?
I would like to remind of Putin's speech yesterday, because he delivered a long speech at the Valdai Club. And first he said that it will be ridiculous to war or rise of war against NATO, and because there is a huge differences between capacity of NATO and Russia. But also he mentioned about atoms, and he said that there were atoms and what happened to them. Yes, they caused some damage, but they couldn't be effective, according to the argument or claim of Putin. And he underlined that we will be also ready and we will be also prepare against Tomahawks. They can also harm us, but they would harm partly. And according to his argument, he said that we will shut down them, and we are prepared. We will improve our air defense systems. So it will not de-escalate the situation, because first of all, especially initially, Biden administration didn't give atoms rockets, but later they were given to Ukraine, but it didn't considerably change the especially flow of the war. So there wouldn't be big changes in the especially field from my view, because other new weapons given to Ukraine and
right,
Russia
Dr. Hazir. Of course, all valid points there, but there's something else that I would like to get your take on. Now, Putin seems to have poured irony on European claims that Russian drones had invaded NATO airspace. Now, let me come to you, Professor Kasny, for this one. Now, European authorities have accused Russia of brazen violation of the region's airspace, including with the recent incursions over Poland and fighter jets over Estonia. What do you have to say to that?
I say it's very, very dangerous. If you can see behind me, out the window, you'll see the city of Hiroshima. Now, Hiroshima was the first target of an atomic bomb by the United States in 1945, and the city was leveled. 2 miles in every direction were flattened. Those were very primitive, early prototypes of nuclear weapons. We have far more powerful and more accurate nuclear weapons now. And so when in 2022, the CIA reported they thought there was a 50-50 chance that the Ukraine war would turn into a nuclear war. The last thing we need now are more weapons systems being introduced. When Biden in 2024 gave permission to Ukraine to use ATACMS missiles strike deep inside of Russia, the world held its breath because we knew how dangerous that was. We don't want these escalations. Russia has changed its nuclear doctrine, lowered the threshold for use of nuclear weapons. The United States is also making nuclear threats. And we've got this danger around the world right now. So what we need to do is tone this down. We need to ease the tensions. We need diplomacy. It was good when Putin and Trump met in Alaska.
Absolutely.
But then Trump started to say that Ukraine can take back all the territory that it's lost. That's crazy. It's
right.
Crazy when Trump says that the war was not provoked. It was highly provoked. Russia was provoked. I don't think they should have invaded, but they were provoked. And now this idea that, this idea that if Russia wins, it's going to keep on taking Europe, that's not going to happen. That is not what this war is about. It's about NATO
right, Professor
expansion.
Kasny, those are some really intriguing points over there. Now I'll have to thank you both for joining us on the broadcast and helping us paint a comprehensive picture for our viewers with your points and counterpoints.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.